Welcome to Amanda Spann's Minimal Viable Podcast, the show that gives you a real and relatable look at the world of tech and entrepreneurship from industry all-stars. Today on MVP, we welcome self-love advocate, influencer, and entrepreneur Shelah Marie. Shelah and I will discuss the catalyst for launching her wellness community, Curvy Curly Conscious, building a brand around yourself, and putting self-compassion into practice as a business founder. MVP is brought to you by Simplero, the all-in-one software for online entrepreneurs. Most digital coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs are using 7+ online tools that still don't meet their needs. Simplero reduces the headache of product management by allowing you to host your mailing list, online courses, membership communities, marketing automation, and digital products all on one platform. It's my personal go-to tool of choice for selling my ebooks and courses, and I think it's pretty affordable, simple to use, and easy to get started. So if you like to experience less tech and less stress when selling your content or products online, check out Simplero at simplero.com. That's SIMPLERO.com. Now let's start the show. Hi, Shelah. Welcome to MVP. So happy to have you. It's great to have a fellow Floridian, fellow Noel. I think you're the second Noel I've had on MVP. So I'm very excited about having you and sharing all of your experiences as an entrepreneur with the audience.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here. And yes, shout out to the Noel community.
So I will jump right into it. You've been taking off over the past few years, kind of building your self-love and self-care movement, Curvy Curly Conscious. And I kind of just wanted to get into, it kind of felt like the movement kind of came out of nowhere, but I know there's a backstory to it. I know you were once living in New York. You moved back to Florida, and then it seemed like, Curvy Curly Conscious just kind of took off. But was there a catalyst that inspired you to launch it? Like, do you remember a specific moment that you're like, you know what, I need to do this, and here's why I need to do it?
Well, it did kind of come out of nowhere. I had started building my online presence, through Instagram, and I kind of attracted this community of women. And it was just online, but when I moved to Miami and I wasn't in New York anymore, I wasn't really auditioning anymore, I was like, okay, so what next? Like, what am I going to do now? And so I just was like, well, the same principles I used in the theater, I can kind of use here. And so I realized, there's no replacement for human connection, being in the same room with people. So that's really where it started. I was like, let's see if we can make an event. And I was working with Tasha, who's also she went to FSU too. And that's where me and Tasha met. And so we were like, let's do an event. And that's how it started. We did our first Curvy Curly Conscious event in Miami. And it wasn't a company then. It was just an event.
And so when you had that first event, did you immediately think, okay, we have to expand this into more? Or was it just like, oh, we're just going to continue to throw events?
It was like, we have to do this again. We can't stop here. We have something here. That's what we were all kind of feeling like. This is something. This is very special, and we should just build on it. But I'm not a person who had a plan. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I wanted to go, which is kind of been bad and good at the same time. If you want to say bad and good, it's just, it's been challenging, and then it's been awesome too. But I just kept going. I kept just doing the next thing. It's they're coming to my event. Okay, well, can we do a tour? We did 4 cities, and they showed up in 4 cities. We're like, wow, okay, well, somebody approached us, want to co-produce a retreat? Well, okay, sure. We sold out the retreat in 24 hours, and then we added more rooms, and we sold those out in 24 hours. We added more rooms and sold those out in 24. In 36 hours, we sold out 3 times. I was like, okay, we have something. Then I launched a retreat, completely our own retreat, which was Unruly, sold that out. So I just keep going. I'm like, as long as this is working, I'm going to keep going. And probably if it never even worked, I'd still do it because, this is what I do in my free time. This is what I do if nobody was paying me. I love learning about the mind, about healing, meditation, seeing the limitations of, what we can create in our lives. And I love introducing that to my community of Black women.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. And, I think as entrepreneurs, there's often so many times that we run into these hurdles, or we just try something. We don't know if that's necessarily going to work. And I think sometimes a lot of people struggle in those moments, whether it's hugely successful or it's not. You're like, okay, I didn't plan on doing this, but now I'm here. Like, is this, like, kind of God's way of telling me to keep going? Is it God's way of telling me there should be a hard stop? I should be, focusing on something else? But it seems like everything is kind of working kind of in divine intervention. And it's like, you have this huge following. You have this group of people who are supporting what you do. It seems like you kind of have this great market fit there, and it's just all aligning. But, you mentioned earlier that you weren't, per se an entrepreneur. You didn't have necessarily a roadmap when you first started. So have you felt any dissonance or possibly imposter syndrome about kind of building a community like this? And
all the time, because I really practice what I preach, and what I preach is that I speak to thousands of women, and most of the time I hear, I don't have any time for myself, I'm overworked, I'm underpaid, like that they just are running and running and running like a hamster on a wheel. So, what I preach is, sis, make time for yourself. Actually enjoy the present moment. Don't wait until you get the business, it takes off, or you get the job, or you get the partner, or you lose the weight or whatever, to experience fullness and happiness and stillness. Do it now. So I do that. So with that said, I am not the traditional entrepreneur. I don't even know if I'm an entrepreneur now. I looked at the definition the other day, and I don't know if that's me. I'm just creating things, but traditionally, you will see, if you look on Instagram, if you follow, the popular thought right now, it's they're grinding, they're doing this, it's moving, and just a lot of, it's just the hustle. Every time I say that now, I think of this, but I just think there's a lot work, don't stop, grind mentality, which I think is helpful, but it is not me. It is not who I am. I get burnt out like that, and it's not good for my mental health. So what I do is I work, and then I stop. And then I don't do it. I do other shit, like Netflix, have good times with my boo, meditate, whatever. I don't live that. So that is why I felt I still do feel imposter syndrome sometimes, because I'm if I'm a business owner, shouldn't I always be shouldn't I know every single thing about every single thing there is to know? I should be registering for a conference. I should be always reading a book. I should be and it's just I get that, but that's just not who I am. Period.
No, I'm not mad at that. We talk a lot on this podcast about wellness as a form of business development, and we actually had another guest who was on probably the first or second or third episode, and he just talked about hustle porn and how you have the Gary V's and all these people who are creating content out there that's you essentially should be working all the time, you shouldn't sleep, and it's just you're gonna kill me doing this. I can't.
I saw an interview with one of my friends, and she was interviewing another black female entrepreneur, and they were I feel like Gary Vee's trying to kill me.
Yeah. Literally, I can't, I'm not gonna make it. If it's not my body breaking down, it's my mind. And how can I provide the best iteration of a product or a service or an event if I'm not well, right? I'm a fraction of myself right now. So we really appreciate that. So many of the entrepreneurs who come on MVP are we really try to emphasize the human side of entrepreneurship, or just building something from scratch, right? At the end of the day, we're just people with ideas who are just trying to bring them to fruition. And I don't think most people realize the labor or just the intensity that goes into just bringing something to life.
Oh my God, yes. Especially in the creative space. It wasn't even until this year that somebody asked me well, how many hours a week do you work? And I'm I don't know. I probably work 40. They're okay, but do you count engaging with people on Instagram? Do you count that kind? I'm no, that might be another 10. Or well, do you count? And when I started to count everything, I was I'm doing what I said I didn't want to do. I work 80 hours a week. And just even thinking about the space you need to make in your life to be creative. I have to make space to think about writing meditations and recording them, and to think about new content that I can do at the retreat. I actually have to make space for my own healing journey so that I can continue to teach women and provide for them. What am I going to teach women at my retreat if I'm not on a consistent journey of healing and moving forward to the next level. So where's the space for all that if you're working constantly? You know what I'm saying? So I feel like bringing these things forward, it's like birthing. It's like it just takes a lot. It's all encompassing. And so for me, I felt like I needed to create balance, and that's where I am right now, I think. Not even last year. I keep saying last year. It feels like 2019 is over. It's not. But in 2019 was the first year I experimented with a sales funnel, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Right? Everybody says.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shelah, you have almost 300,000 followers. Oh, my God. You could monetize that. You know that you could be maybe conversion rate. If you got this, and, I started to see dollar signs. I started to think, well, I got to make the most of it. Like, I know I'm getting married. I'm probably going to have kids. I got to set myself up. And, like, I did all these things. I started thinking about the digital space, and I could monetize it in this way. And I planned for this year we did 2 events, one in D.C., one in Atlanta, a retreat, and a meditation circle online, plus a webinar, plus all these things. Like, I was doing so many things, courses, everything, and it totally spread me thin. And it dissolved my team, too, but in a good way. It needed to happen. But, we were all overstretched, and literally at the end of it, when I, reviewed all my budgets, I could have made more if I did less. If I just did the retreat and did nothing else and sat down and did no other work for the entirety of 2019, I could have made more. But what happened is I got caught in the trap of, people. I just feel like there's a lot of business advice out there, and I don't know how much of it works for everybody. So for me, you got to have a sales funnel. You got to have marketing this and this and that. And I did all of the things that people tell you you're supposed to do. Projections, da-da-da. And the lesson that I learned was do what works for you. I feel like there was a documentary on Netflix. I wish I could remember them exactly. And Bruce Lee was saying, I can't remember who it is now. It's one of them. He's gave 4 principles for his study of martial arts. And it was research. But the one thing that I remember, the final thing was take what works for you. He studied all these principles from all these different places, and then he got rid of everything that didn't serve him and just stuck to the things that worked for him. You got to create what works for you, and that's where I am now. So right now, Curvy Curly Conscious is just producing retreats. That's what we're doing, and curating our online presence on Instagram, our community there, instead of doing all these other things. And I feel like so far it's been very enlightening, and it's good. It's too early to say how it's going to be because we're still in the early phases of it, but this is what works for me right now, and that's what I advise other people too. You got to be flexible.
At least it sounds like you are happy with that place, and I'm in a kind of a similar place right now, and I call it my slowing up process. Because, it's just so easy to get caught up. And I think we just, as women in particular, or just overachievers, just have a tendency to say yes to so many things, especially when you're presented with cool opportunities. And you're like, oh, this is cool. This is something I want to be a part of. This is something I want to co-collaborate on. This is something I want to produce. And then you say yes to it, and then you're completely and totally burnt out, spread so thin, and everything is just kind of working. It's working well, but it's not excellent, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of got into a place where I'm okay, none of this stuff is working to the degree I want. The funnels aren't working the way I want. I should have more steady flow. I should be working with clients in a different capacity, and it just wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And so for the past few months, I've really been working on one project as pretty much exclusively. And although it is uncomfortable, right, because I am having to say no to so many different things, I'm having to sit still, this process has brought me a great degree of peace, and it's made me rectify some bad habits I've developed as a result of just working on too many projects, right? And I think if I'm ultimately going to get to a place where I'm constantly at peace, or, I'm seeing, my personal wellness and my business flourish the way I want to, then I'm just going to have to go through this trial, right? I'm going to have to go through this season of life where everything is going to be uncomfortable. It is not going to be what I know. I'm going to have to break these habits, unlearn these things, and then produce new habits so that I can get to the place that I want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a challenge, and it's a part of self-care that I don't think people talk about enough, right? We talk about, bubble baths and going and get a massage and things like that and essential oils, but do we talk about like breaking our own bad habits and having to sit with ourselves and rectify with the fact that, like, I've been doing these things that have really been breaking me down as a person and a professional. So I totally relate to that, and I wish you guys the best with the retreats. I'm excited to attend one in the future, and I'm curious to know, like, how you producing the retreats has helped you evolve as like a woman and as an entrepreneur.
Well, it's given me another level of confidence for sure. Like, being a business owner in the way that I am, like startup, I would say, requires a lot of experimentation, and implicit, it requires a lot of failure, and I'm like using that word in air quotes because it's just trial and error. That's just the name of the game. So sometimes it can feel discouraging because, it feels like it's not working, but it's not that it's not working. It's just a part of the process, like you're learning. So with the retreats, it's something that definitely works, and that gives me a level of confidence. Not only that women trust me with like such a high price point item, but that when I'm in the space with them and I see what happens and I see the changes that are happening and the shifts and like the community that they're making, I just am reminded like I'm very good at what I do. I'm humble about a lot of things. It's not even me. It's maybe just I'm the vessel, but there's a lot of things that I'm not that great at. I'm great at what I do. I am great. Like when you come to my retreat, you will not leave the same person that you came. You will have a great time. You will be introduced to a community of women that are non-judgmental and that, like, you just will feel an energy that's kind of hard to explain, but that is very special. That gave me another level of confidence as a business owner, like, hey, you can do this thing, and it is actually selling, because I was always like, I don't like selling, but that's selling, right, in a certain way, but it's like, it doesn't feel like selling because it's something that I genuinely believe in, something that I genuinely love, and that I genuinely know is beneficial and special. I'm like I know you can find a lot of retreats that will do yoga and meditation. You can find wellness retreats everywhere, but to find a retreat that is specifically based around wellness for Black women, that's not elitist, and that has the level of like fun and turn up that we have and doesn't take itself too seriously, nope. I'm very confident in that. Like, it's a special thing we got going. So that's what I'm like, that's my lane, and I'm just going to go ahead and just ride that lane and just do my thing, and not try to be in everybody else's lane where it's more crowded.
No, for sure. I had the pleasure of attending your like self-care day party in Chicago, and I didn't know what a self-care day party was. I was like, what is that? Like, what? I didn't know what to anticipate or what I would be getting out of it. But I'm so glad I attended because I saw, it made me realize that there are, women all over the country, Black women, but women all over the world, right, who don't have safe spaces. And I think I've taken for granted to some degree that I've always had friends who I could confide in, who I could ask questions. I had family members who, if nothing else, I could go to them and be like, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? Like, I need to be educated about my body. I need to know this. And a lot of women don't have that. And so, for you to create these spaces for them where they can talk candidly without judgment, where they can be empowered and they can be uplifted, you see it on a very micro level in different communities around the country, but at scale, you don't really see it. And it's very difficult. And I think you brought a great point up about like the elitism because, I do get invited to retreats and I'm like, there's only a certain type of woman here, right? With certain things on their resume and certain access to certain rooms. And that's not always what we need. Like that circle might be great for my professional career, but is it great for my heart? I'm not sure. And so I think, what you guys have created is really great. Is there anything that you wish people knew about what you did or what you do, or about entrepreneurship in general that you think people don't see enough of?
Well, I think that people don't see enough of maybe not the skeleton, but it's almost like you see a beautiful body, but maybe not like all of the things inside of it that are like keeping it all together. So I think entrepreneurship is kind of glorified right now, and it feels really cool for everybody. Like everybody wants a business now. Like I remember when I first like put my P.O. box up on my bio, like I got so many T-shirts. I was like, I don't know if we need more T-shirt companies right now. So many body butter companies. So it's like good that people are encouraged to do entrepreneurship right now. But I feel like kind of maybe being realistic about what it actually looks like to do it, and is it for you? What is the reason you want to be an entrepreneur? Are you trying to prove something to yourself? Are you trying to validate some part of yourself? Are you looking for some level of acknowledgement? Is it some level of freedom you want to access? But knowing what is driving you, like why are you doing this? Because what I see a lot of is people that leave corporate worlds, go off into the like in the freelancing and entrepreneur, and they recreate the same exact structures that they left in corporate America. And then also too, like, you know what I mean? People are like, they are funding everything by themselves and eating into savings and working and through dinner and all of it. And it's like, so wait a minute, what was the goal again?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that will be like, just grind it out for 5 years and just eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. All advice, but I just don't know if it's real, like, practical or not. And then you can just, and then when you get there, like, there's this kind of narrative of, especially in America, like, work hard, and then it'll pay off, and then you can sit down. And I just don't know if that time ever comes. So I feel like it's kind of an oasis in the desert sometimes. Like, what are you building? What are you working for? If not, like, your life that's actually happening right now.
Yeah. And I just got into a debate on Facebook about this the other day. I don't know if you saw the article that came out, and I think it was written by like the Washington Post or somebody like that, about Henrys, which is like high earning, like net worth individuals or something like that. And it's essentially people who are making six figures, whether they're doing it in corporate or they're freelancing, but they still feel like they're working check to check. And so a lot of people were commenting on it and saying, well, I work my job or whatnot, and I make way less than six figures, but I do X, Y, and Z. I don't go out to eat. I don't ever go to parties. I don't go do this and blase, blase. Like, they pretty much go to work and go home, right? And, some of those people were saying that in the capacity of, like, they work a regular job. Some of those people were saying it in the capacity of they freelance or, they work from project to project, and this is the way they have to live, but they're saving or whatnot. But it's just like, okay, well, it's great that you're saving, but are you living, right? Are you living while you're alive, right? Because we can go at any moment. And I think that's something we have to think about, especially as entrepreneurs, because, I think a lot of us just don't want to walk, per se. We've got so much skin in the game, we don't want to walk away from our ideas, especially when it's not working. And there's so many seasons where it doesn't feel like it's working. Like, even if you have a successful event, there may be something going on behind the scenes that might be a catalyst that ends everything. And I think I think social media often like rushes people, and it provides this highlight reel where you're seeing everybody's wins. But what is missing is these seasons of feast or famine, right? Like, in entrepreneurship, I found, at least in my experience, that I'm either feasting and, like, I'm at the top of my shit. Everything is going well.
So true.
Or it's a complete famine, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And this is a disaster. Why am I doing this? I should just go get a job and call it a day. And I think, there's just been, to some degree, it's like, I think just the nature of things right now is like start a business, get empowered, economic empowerment, but I think we really have to be transparent with people about, like, in order for you to get this business or to get your business to the next level, you need one solid stream of income first. Like, something has to be solidified first, and that's okay if that's a job. That is absolutely okay. There is no shame in having a job. Even I don't care if you are busting tables. I don't care if you're working corporate. Like, there's no shame in having a job to support yourself, and then to secondly fund any other dreams you might have. And I think, you know, we miss that in these business conversations and this correspondence we're having back and forth. And I think we also miss the part about, like, it's not healthy just to work all the time. Like, yes, sometimes that's what it requires, but if that is your norm, like, you might want to question whether, like, entrepreneurship is for you, or if entrepreneurship, the way you're doing it, is making sense. And, you know, I've had to have that conversation with myself a lot of times where I'm just like, you know what, this isn't really working. So I can continue to do this and run myself into the ground, or I could go another direction with it, or I could just go get a job. And I think that's okay. I think people just need to have those conversations with themselves more as opposed to, you know, holding on to this idea that this is the only way to get it. This is the only way to make it, and this is the only way to achieve happiness is if I grind it out. And you know, we tell all these stories about winners and, like, how many success stories, but, like, we don't hear all this. Like, for every one of these success stories, there's probably 10,000 failures.
I know.
10,000 people who just didn't make it, who you know, ended up in immense amount of debt because they stuck it out an additional year or an additional year and an additional year. So it is, you know, something. I don't know how we go about balancing that out or telling those stories on a level playing field, because people want to hear the good stuff. So how do we give equal attention to the stories of failure or the stories of, you know, challenge and like how we mitigated them? So I don't know if you have any insights about that. Like, how do we, you know, put these realistic and transparent stories on the same pedestal as we do of, like, hype and hustle porn?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on your network. Like, my network, I have, like, on Instagram especially, I follow a lot of honest and transparent people and people that share candidly and openly about struggles and the wins. And so, like, that's kind of my community. So I hear those stories all the time. So I don't know. I think it depends on, who you surround yourself with and who you're listening with. I can't even follow people, to me, who don't give me some groundedness. Like, don't just give me fluff. Like, I need to have some level, like, what vulnerability or something maybe is the word I'm looking for. If I don't see that, I really don't even follow it. So I don't even know that that you're talking about. I'm like, wow, I'm so used to hearing the opposite.
That actually question, like, who I follow, because I get a lot of, I think I get a little bit of both, but people more so kind of motivating other people, attempting to provide bits of insights and inspiration on, like, you know, you can get through this and this is what you need to do, and kind of strategizing on ways to kind of mitigate your circumstances, as opposed to the kind of the Gary V's work harder, work harder, work harder. It's just like, okay, this is a challenge you might encounter. Here's how to get around it. But yeah, I think Miley Teal is a great example of somebody. I don't know if you follow her, but I think she's a great example of somebody who, like, she overshares to the point where you get a full picture of what it's like in her life as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as a partner. And it's really interesting to see, and she does a really good job of, like, refining and kind of telling her story in a way that is, like, digestible. So, go ahead.
I said, no, that's super dope.
Yeah, so I don't have too many more questions for you, but I kind of wanted to wrap up with just one, you know, you providing a few tips to, you know, entrepreneurs or just people, just self-starters and creatives, on how they can practice better self-compassion and make self-care habitual. And then lastly, I kind of just wanted to hear what's next for Curvy Curly Conscious.
Yeah, I think that if you're a self-starter and you're creating things on your own, I think you asked about compassion, and that's, like, so important. I think kindness and compassion for yourself is a huge part of loving yourself. I know self-love can be such like a blanket statement, or if someone says self-love, like what does that even mean? So compassion is a great skill to practice for yourself. And what that looks like to me is being kind to yourself when things don't maybe work out or pan out the way you wanted, and being flexible. And so like having a vision and being very clear about the vision and then letting it go. That's a spiritual practice and it's a business practice. Make a plan, walk in that plan, execute it, and then be flexible when you get signs that something needs to change. And don't take it as a failure, which is what I did. This was my lesson. And not to take it as a failure, but just in a lesson. Okay, let's course correct. For me, meditation has been foundational for that. I do a lot of Buddhist meditation, loving kindness meditations for myself and forgiveness for myself, like all of the I should have known better, I should have done that, well, why didn't I do this, all of that, letting go of all of that, because if we don't move through those feelings, that type of self-doubt, that type of self-judgment, that type of harshness on ourselves, we'll recreate it over and over again in different dynamics. And what's next is we're planning our retreat, which will be in July of 2020. And I'm super excited about that. We're going to be releasing the details about that probably in the next month. And I'm releasing a bunch of meditation mixtapes and a Holiday Thrive Guide. It's a series of meditations to get you through the holidays. This is for anyone who has a tough time during the holidays, and particularly with their family. So if you're a person like me, who the holidays come and you start out with all of these like visions of, oh my God, it would be so dope, like we can do sweaters and then the reality sets in that every time you get in a room with certain family members, it becomes toxic, it'd be great. It's a series of meditations, journaling prompts and activities that can prepare you for the holiday season and then help you get through it.
Well, I think people will find that incredibly useful, and I'm glad we're having more conversations about, the real narrative of what's happening, in households across the world. So I think, that will be right on point this time of year. I'm really excited to see it and happy to share it with everyone. So if you could tell everyone who isn't, a fan or follower yet, where to find you on social media, that would be great.
Yes, so my company is curvycurlyconscious.com. It's Curvy Curly Conscious is the company. So you can, all the retreat info is hosted on our website, Curvy Curly Conscious, which is not out yet, but it will be. You can follow us on Instagram at Curvy Curly Conscious. You can follow me on Instagram at the Shelah Marie. That's TheShelah Marie. And my website is ShelahMarie.com. Everything is there.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you again, Shelah. This has been really inspiring, and I can't wait to share it with our listeners.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear it, too.
Thanks for listening to MVP. If you'd like to hear more from me or our guests, visit mvpodcast.substack.com for exclusive content, updates, and announcements. And if you love the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us, or follow us at The Amanda Spann and MV Podcast. Thanks again, and see you next week.